Okay, so picture this, a self-help group, right? It's attracting all these successful people, heiresses, actors, entrepreneurs, all of them just trying to, better themselves. But what if at the very core of this group, there was a secret society? A place where women were literally branded and treated as slaves? Well, that's the story of NXIVM, and it's a chilling look at how the search for personal growth can be twisted into something truly terrifying.
Just let that sink in for a second. That's a direct quote from NXIVM's leader, Keith Raniere. He's talking about how the women in his inner circle should be branded with his initials. And what's so absolutely bone-chilling here isn't just the idea of branding someone, it's the language he uses, the way he talks about justifying it. He's focused on making it seem consensual, on having the victim ask for it. It just goes to show the level of psychological manipulation that was going on from the very beginning. So for years, NXIVM had this polished public image. But then, in 2017, the whole facade just started to crack. A huge bombshell report from the New York Times exposed this secret society that was operating deep inside of it. And we're not talking about some elite club. No, this was a full-on master-slave pyramid scheme. It was called DOS, and women were lured in with promises of empowerment, only to have their entire lives, their autonomy, stripped away. And the name itself, get this, Dominus Obsequious Sororium. It literally translates to master over the obedient female companions. I mean, it's so shockingly blatant you can hardly believe it. Yet it was completely hidden from almost everyone. The whole thing was set up like a pyramid, with Keith Raniere as the one and only male grandmaster at the very top. And below him, a whole hierarchy of female masters and slaves. So how on earth did it get to this point? To really get it, you have to look at the man who built this whole thing from the ground up. Right, so let's talk about the man they called Vanguard, Keith Raniere. Every story like this has a charismatic leader at its center, and he was it. But what's really telling is that if you look at his history, you can see this pattern of manipulation. I mean, it was there long before NXIVM was even a thing. Okay, so this timeline is super important. Look at this. Back in 1990, he starts this multi-level marketing company, right? CBI. By 93, it's being investigated by 20 states as a pyramid scheme. So in 96, he basically gets a slap on the wrist, a fine, and he's barred from promoting these kinds of schemes. But does that stop him? Nope. Just 2 years later, he co-founds Executive Success Programs, or ESP, which would become NXIVM. He literally used the exact same playbook, the same manipulative model. It was all there from the start. So a big part of how he pulled people in was this myth he built around himself. He wanted everyone to believe he was this super genius, He even got himself into the Guinness Book of World Records for having the highest IQ, which, by the way, was from a test in a magazine. But the reality? Well, he barely passed college with a 2.26 GPA. And that huge gap between the persona he sold and the actual truth, that was absolutely key to his control. All right, so you've got this guy with a shady past and a totally made-up persona. So how in the world did he and his co-founder, Nancy Salzman, manage to build NXIVM into this huge, powerful, and incredibly wealthy organization? Well, let's break it down. The whole NXIVM method was just really potent cocktail. On the surface, you had these executive success programs, all about self-improvement. But under the hood, it was this weird mix of ideas from people like Ayn Rand and L. Ron Hubbard, a little hypnosis, all wrapped up in that multi-level marketing structure that Raniere knew so well. And this is crucial. It attracted really wealthy followers, like the Bronfman Harrises. Their money wasn't just funding the group. It was paying for Raniere's lifestyle and, get this, covering $70 million in his personal commodity trading losses. $70 million. So if you're trying to make your organization look legitimate and really get that mainstream acceptance, what do? Well, you go for the ultimate endorsement. And in this case, they spent $2 million to get it. And what did that $2 million buy them? It bought them this moment. In 2009, they got the Dalai Lama himself to appear at their event, present Raniere with a scarf, the whole thing. For NXIVM, this was a massive, massive PR win. I mean, can you imagine a better shield of credibility? This picture helped them deflect so much criticism and shows you just how calculated they were about building this squeaky clean image. But here's the thing, the warning signs were already there, and they were loud. A full 6 years before that photo with the Dalai Lama, Edgar Bronfman Sr., the father of the 2 heiresses who were funding this whole operation, he went on the record in a Forbes magazine expose, and he called NXIVM exactly what it was, a cult. Okay, so let's circle back to that secret inner sanctum we talked about.
DOS, the vow. This is where it all culminates. So how did they maintain such complete, absolute control over these women? Well, the structure was a classic pyramid scheme, really. At the very top, you had Raniere. He was the only man, the Grand Master. Directly below him, you had a small circle of women, his first-line masters. Their job? To go out and recruit their own slaves. And then those slaves were expected to recruit slaves of their own. It was this perfect system designed for total obedience, with everything flowing right back up to Raniere. And the methods they used to control people, they were just systematic and brutal. First, women had to provide what they called collateral. We're talking deeply damaging personal information, photos, assets, anything that could be used against them to guarantee their silence. Then came the starvation diets, the sleep deprivation with these readiness drills at all hours. There was even corporal punishment. And then the branding. This ritual where women were held down and literally branded with a symbol. They were told it represented the elements, but what it really was, a secret monogram of Keith Raniere's initials. The best slave derives the highest pleasure from being her master's ultimate tool. That comes directly from Raniere's own DOS manifesto. And it just lays the whole sick ideology bare, doesn't it? It shows this was never just about control. The goal was to completely rewire a person's sense of self, to make their entire worth dependent on pleasing their master. It was about achieving complete and total submission. But an empire built on lies like this, it can't last forever. And after those media exposés hit, Keith Raniere's carefully constructed world started to come crashing down. So the second that New York Times story broke, Raniere took off. He fled to a luxury villa down in Mexico thinking he could outrun it all. But he couldn't. In March of 2018, Mexican federal police stormed the villa. And where did they find him? The self-proclaimed vanguard, this powerful guru, was found hiding in a walk-in closet. The trial that followed was just damning. I mean, the evidence was overwhelming, and the testimony from his victims was just devastating. It took the jury only 5 hours to come back with a verdict. 5 hours. And as you can see, it was guilty on every single charge. And on October 27th, 2020, the sentence came down. 120 years in prison. And on top of that prison sentence, he was also ordered to pay nearly $3.5 million in restitution. That money was specifically for 21 of his victims to help them cover the cost of everything, from the procedures to remove the brands to their ongoing therapy. So Raniere is locked away. But what's the real legacy here? What's the lasting takeaway from the whole NXIVM saga? Why does this story still matter so much? In the end, the story of NXIVM is so important because it's not just about some bizarre French cult. It's a really powerful cautionary tale. It's about something we can all relate to, that universal desire for self-improvement. NXIVM preyed on people's ambitions, their hopes, their search for more meaningful life. And it forces all of us to ask a really tough question. How can you tell when the search for personal growth crosses a line and becomes a tool for absolute control?